Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and it's time for me to give you guys my day 2 preview of the 2024 NFL Draft. We're going to talk about top prospects remaining, who the Jaguars could try to trade up for, maybe put together a strategy on how they could potentially address all their needs today in the NFL Draft. I think they could come very close on this. I think they could do a phenomenal job doing it as well. But we're going to talk about that. I'm going to preface this by saying that, quite frankly, like the way these things work, this is the part of the draft where it becomes very difficult to predict picks. There's a very high chance that Jacksonville does not go after these top players that I have on my board. We'll see. I hope to be wrong, but it just generally is the way it works for teams. But I am going to talk about, like, what would the strategy be here? What do I think they might do? So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Looking at our selections today, nothing has changed with day 2. We thought for a while yesterday that we might, lose that second rounder because they're potentially moving up for a receiver. Made a lot of calls. They did not get a deal done because, well, honestly, like the offers that would have had to be sent were insane. I don't know if they would have been worth it. At most, I think you would have came out even on it. And that's not good enough. You want to get picks that have more value than what you gave up to go get there. And so they just didn't have the opportunity. I think they swung really well to move back and to get Brian Thomas Jr. They hit a major need. We'll see how that works out, though. If you guys want to go check out my analysis on that pick, I uploaded it last night at like 1:30 in the morning, my time. So keep in mind, I was a little tired when I recorded it, but I feel like there's some pretty good thoughts in there. Ultimately, like, I think it's a really good pick, or it can be. I'll say that because Brian Thomas Jr. is a moldable ball of clay. He can be a lot of things in the NFL. It comes down to patience by the team that picks him, which is us, and being able to develop him. And so if they can do that right, if the fans can have patience, because I'll tell you, there'll probably be moments that first year where people turn on him. Have patience with it because this could work out really well in the long term. But I do think that they pivoted well. They hit a major need, and it's really nice to see this offense becoming more vertical in what they're going to throw out. They have 3 receivers who can all play that side of the game. So I love to see that, but obviously, like, he's got to develop more. He needs to be a better route runner. He needs to work on his releases because right now, like, he's a very similar player to Gabe Davis. That's the criticism of the pick, but I don't even really want to give a grade on it. I said C last night with the potential to be F- and A+. Like, it could be anything. We don't know until we watch him on the field. But that's kind of my thought on it. And this grade is basically my grade on my big board, not the grade of the pick itself. Now, talking about day 2 here. So we got a little more capital to work with if we want to move up. We got pick 167 for the Minnesota Vikings. If they want to trade future picks, which they usually don't, picked up Minnesota's 3rd. Now, let me correct this here. Minnesota's 4th. So we've got more picks to work with down the road. And that's going to be really exciting for next year because it's going to be fun to have those extra selections to do in mock drafts and stuff. And I like that way of building the team. Getting future capital, just keeping yourself ahead with draft picks. I think they've done a great job of that coming into every year with really good assets. Now, looking at the big board, for me, like, if I'm making the decision, this is a very easy choice on what I'm doing. I have a blue chip prospect sitting out here, wasn't picked. The Bills probably aren't taking him. Right now, I am calling the Patriots, and I'm telling them, what do I have to send you to get this trade done? Because to me, I look at the depth chart of this team. And this is updated with Brian Thomas Jr. here. Still got Zay Jones. We'll see if he gets released or what happens. I think he honestly should go somewhere else because there's just not the role here. But right now, Jacksonville, they need offensive line depth. That's still a need. I don't know if you hit that necessarily too much on day 2. I think it depends on the value of the players. It's definitely in play, though. The major things are on defense, though, because, you could say Roland Darby is a good starter when he's out there. He has a lot of injury issues. He's probably not going to play the whole year, and you need your guy of the future. Because you also don't got Tyson Campbell under contract, and even if Campbell goes out, has a great year, you might not get him back because you might be pushing that extension down the road and then miss on it. So Jacksonville needs to get a cornerback. And the other thing that's really underrated right now, and why Jacksonville had another opportunity last night to make a really good pick if they wanted to stick at 17 and take the guy who went there in Dallas Turner, or, talking about Johnny Newton, of course, who's still out there. This team does not have good defensive line depth right now. That's just my opinion. I think they've maybe got a little bit more on the interior, but to me, like Tyler Lacey, not my ideal backup. He could become that, but usually you want to have a plan until he is that, right? You've got Adam Gotsis, you've got Roy Robertson Harris who kicks inside. He's going to be gone after a year. The way that the defensive line works, there's so much rotation on the interior that you want to ideally have 3 guys. And so you can draft someone at that position who may be listed as a backup on the depth chart, but is really a starter. And that's what I would advocate for, because you look at this, you got the best defensive tackle in the class available still, in my opinion at least. Some people say Byron Murphy, and that's fine. He's a very good player. But Johnny Newton is 8th overall for me. There is a role for him in Jacksonville. There's a need for him in Jacksonville, especially with 2 guys who have injury issues on your defensive line playing on the interior right now. That's the way I'm looking. The other need to throw out before we talk more about some of the other prospects, they need depth in the edge rusher room. The best edge rusher that they have right now behind Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker is Trevis Gibson. And while he's great in the preseason, we don't know what he is in the regular season. It could be an underrated signing. It could be a good one. I acknowledge that. I hope it is. I can't make my bet on that. I am absolutely looking at an opportunity to go get an edge player. However, are they there? I think that's kind of the problem. Because you look down my board, you get Chris Braswell at 46th overall. He would not be my second round pick. There's actually no scenario where he's the highest guy for me at 48 based off players ranked below him already going for me. But I think you got to look at getting a player in that room as well, ideally. Now, looking at the actual prospects, some very obvious ones at the top of the list. We talked about Johnny Newton. You also got Kool-Aid McKinstry, who I think is the one they're going to target. McKinstry makes a ton of sense. We know they like him. We know he was probably one of their top options at 23, and he's a press man corner. He's a damn good one. That is a player I'm looking to move up for on day 2. And I would even consider calling at 34th the Patriots to get that done as well. It's just, if it's me, I'm still taking Newton because I think Newton is a better player. But you've got Kool-Aid there too. Kind of a weird one, but one that we thought would happen after some of the rumors the last couple of weeks. Adonai Mitchell. Still on the board right now. It's crazy. But he's sitting there. He's my 24th overall prospect. Has the room to grow into a wide receiver 1. He could be that at the next level. However, of course, Jacksonville doesn't have a need there. They took Brian Thomas Jr. You're not looking at that pick. One that would be really, honestly, I'd just say it'd be really funny if they went this direction. After all the hype about him, Jackson Powers Johnson is still sitting there on the board. And I know that he wouldn't immediately start. I get that. However, you can move off Mitch Morse next year if you want. You can have Jackson Powers Johnson play guard. He could be your right guard after Brandon Scherf leaves the team almost inevitably after the season. So Jackson Powers Johnson, while he's not an immediate starter, he is the caliber of player to where I would take a shot at him personally. I think he's a very good player, and I've even seen him in some people's like top 10s on their big boards. And that I think comes down to like, how do you value the position? But what we got to remember is this guy, everything they threw at him, he was able to handle it. The problem and why he fell to day 2 is apparently about injury concerns. It's actually about concussions. So we'll see. Maybe that's not a huge deal. Maybe it is. I would be willing to risk the pick on that. Because I think, while he would not start immediately, he is a great value at 48. You give him that year, develop him. I think he's phenomenal for you in that second season. And when he fills in, when people inevitably get hurt. Now, I've also got Edgerrin Cooper here. It's not an option, but I will say, like, I do like him a lot. He's a phenomenal player. I think he would have been a perfect fit. But with Foye Oluokun taking the pay cut, there's no conversation here. We have too many linebackers at this point. Now, Chris Jenkins Jr., if Jacksonville wants to sit there at 48, this is probably my best option, assuming he is there. And we'll have to see, because the Chargers are going to pick. They might go after him. They might also, take like a Roman Wilson. I just get the feeling they're going to go with a Michigan player. So Chris Jenkins Jr., he's still sitting out here. He's a really good run defender as well, something Jacksonville needs to improve in. He makes a ton of sense as a pick. I would love the selection for Jacksonville. Keon Coleman, Lad McConkey, same thing as A.D. Mitchell in the sense that it's not a position we're going with, right? Like, good players still out there. We're not picking them. Tyler Nubin would be a bit of a shocker too, with Antonio Johnson here, but he is a very good player. I think the next guys you're considering, it's Ennis Rakestraw Jr., who could fall to 48. That is possible, that he could be there. And I would be okay if Jacksonville took him over, Chris Jenkins Jr., if they feel like that's something I got to do. I have a B+ on both of them. I think they're both very good players. I just think that I'm probably a little more confident in Chris Jenkins projecting, in the value of defensive tackles a little bit bigger. But I love what Rakestraw brings to the game. I love his mentality. He arguably has the best mentality of this class at cornerback, other than maybe Terrion Arnold. And that's debatable. You also got Christian Haynes, who I would love as the pick. He is a very good guard. He's played right guard. He would be ready to come in and start if he has to this year. But you get your succession plan. You have someone who can kick around on the interior too. You could even have him as your center of the future if you really wanted. But Christian Haynes, I think that would be a very good investment where, yeah, does he start the first year? Maybe not. I'm willing to pick those kinds of guys if they're the right players, and Christian Haynes is the right player. So he's definitely an option at 48. He could even be an option maybe in a trade back, for all we know. Zach Frazier, for me, I don't think he's a fit for the scheme that well, but he is a very good player. Like him a lot. And then probably the last guy I'll throw out, Renardo Green. So Green is a very good press man corner. He will be there at 48. I think he'll also be there early round 3. So if Jacksonville wants to keep playing the trade down game, this is something that they could do. They could say maybe Detroit wants to move up from I think maybe they gave up 73, so they don't have it. Let's say maybe Carolina wants to make another move. They offer you a future pick. They offer you their third next year. You move back to 65, you get Renardo Green, you still hit a need. Now you got more picks next year. You got 2 selections, should be early in the 3rd round. I'm looking at teams like that to trade with if I'm set on a cornerback and the top 2 guys are gone for me. I don't think the top 2 guys will go without the Jaguars having an opportunity to move up, but this is an option. And generally at the end of the day, and probably one of the biggest takeaways I had last night, doing this for the first time with my big board and watching like what players go, you are almost always going to be better off trading back, taking the guy who falls. There's always someone who falls. And so doing that for Renardo Green, who could be one of those guys, I think that's fine. I think they could definitely do that. So definitely would advocate for that as one of their possibilities, but at the same time, on day 2, if you've got these first round grades sitting there at the top of your board, you can make another first round pick essentially. You just don't get the 5th-year option. So I like that as an idea too. There's a lot of things Jacksonville can do. What they can't do is go reaching down the board and say, oh, well, let's take Cam Hart in the 2nd round. Do something like that. That's what they got to avoid because they've done a lot of that in recent years. Also, just to throw it out here, grades are a little bit messed up here. I'll fix these after. There's some player movement. The last couple days, I just didn't update grades. So getting into talking about like the actual picks here and who could end up going with these. I think to start that for the Bills, this is probably a wide receiver. I don't know necessarily what wide receiver. That's kind of the hard thing to predict. But I think that's the direction they go. It's a major need. I assume they did not want Xavier Legette as their top option, which is why they're okay moving out. But this is a major need. They want an X guy. I think realistically Mitchell would be the best guy. They might go with Coleman, though. I could see that. There's a lot of options here. For the sake of this, we'll go with Keon Coleman, assuming Mitchell continues to fall. Could be a different player. But I think that pick gets shooed in. At 34, this is where I think a team could move up. Because I don't think Buffalo's moving back again. They've already embarrassed themselves enough trading with Kansas City. They got to make the damn pick. But if Jacksonville wants to move up here, we'll look at what the trade value could be. So we're going to start with 48 and 96 realistically. Pick 34 is worth 560. 48 and 96 is worth 420 and 116. The value is 536 there. Where they could trade up to, if they're really stingy on the capital, is the Los Angeles Chargers pick. I think this is the more realistic, especially if you don't have a preference of these top players. However, for me, there is a big gap in some of these grades. We've got an S tier guy that's blue chip. We've got an A. We've got an A minus. And you got multiple A minuses here. So like Jackson Powers Johnson would be the one you'd consider. I think one of them gets through. If you don't want to give up a ton more, you can flip pick 96 and then take a guy maybe at 37. So what this could look like if they want to move with the Patriots might throw in, let's see, so it's the value is 536. You need to get up to 560. You got to throw in 24 more points. I think you throw in that Minnesota pick you got. And it might have to be more because, think at the end of the day, Jacksonville is bidding against other teams for this pick. There are other teams that are going to want to move up into the early second. The price is probably going to be a bit bigger. So if they want to do that, maybe they're throwing in 153 and 212, and they're giving up a lot of picks to do it. That's possible too. I think that's a trade you could see. If New England sits here, I would guess right now they take a wide receiver. They could also not. They could try to get Devontae Walker. I could see that just because they got Drake May. I think they have a little bit of a need there, especially not getting Calvin Ridley. They might go Johnny Newton. There's a lot of different ways that they could go with this pick. Based off of their needs, I'll probably... Oh, man, this is a hard one, I think. Yeah, they could really go any way. Let's say they take Johnny Newton here. They just go with best player available. Arizona, I think they could be the Kool-Aid McKinstry team. I think they could be the Jackson Powers Johnson team even, based off what they've taken as well. I think they're going to take best player available. I think a player goes here. Let's say in this scenario, it could be Cooper DeJean even. We'll have him go with Jackson Powers Johnson. That's one they've been closely associated to. And we know Washington's been looking for a tackle. So this might be Kingsley Suamataia. If you get picks like this, you're sitting here at 37. This is where you can realistically move up. You can work with the Chargers, trade them. Let's maybe see if there's something else we can do here, because we don't want to give up 96 ideally. It's worth 116. 114 and 116 is worth 128. Maybe you flip your 4th rounders. Let me move to Jacksonville here. To move up to 37, you still got 96. You got 153, 167, all these picks. And you're taking Kool-Aid McKinstry here with the pick. I could see that being the realistic trade-up that happens. And could he go before this? Absolutely. He could continue to fall down the board too. My opinion, I think, and this could change. I'll just be honest, guys. Like, my opinions change quite a bit when it comes to the draft. And there's going to be a lot of thinking about this today. But I would be moving up for Johnny Newton, for sure. Like, that would be end-all, be-all. I'm trying to bid out every team. If I don't get him, I know we like Kool-Aid a ton, and it would be a good trade-up. You've still got Ennis here. You've still got Renardo Green. Kool-Aid's got the foot injury. He might continue to fall. You have other options. If you're hell-bent on getting one of those players and you don't get Newton, let the board start falling to you. Wait until maybe one of those guys is left, then go make your trade. That would be my approach to how I would deal with it. Because I think at pick number 48, there's going to be some really good players available at that pick. And you might even get one of these guys who slips through the cracks because you've got injury issues that really change the whole game. So that would be my approach if you don't get Johnny. But Johnny he'd be my guy for sure. I have him ranked higher than even Brian Thomas Jr., and it's by quite a bit too. I mean, I had Brian Thomas Jr. at 25. I think he could be worth a heck of a lot more than that. I think he could also be worth a heck of a lot less than that. He's a player with a lot of variance. But Johnny Newton is a much better prospect to me. I would love to take him in the 2nd round. So that's where I'm going to stand. But those are some trades you can see. Given their picks, given their depth chart and stuff, you know, I think they've played the right game so far, moving back, trying to get more capital. They're going to love to have those picks next year. It also gives them the ability to make a trade at the trade deadline if they need that guy to send them over the top. A lot of things to like. So you got all these picks. Try to find a way to keep them, but keep hitting on really big players. There, like I said, a lot of different ways you could do that. That would be my approach, though. Johnny Newton, or I'm sticking at 48 unless the board is falling poor and I need to move up and make sure I get one of the guys I really want. So those are my thoughts. At pick 96, at that point, like, it's so far down that I don't know who's going to be there. Like, I can't really give a ton of thought on it. Maybe I'll give some thought after we talk about pick 48. I'm going to try to live stream for it today, figure something out there. But, you know, at that point, you're just taking best player available. Once you get to, like, late 3rd round, compensatory picks, that would be my approach. So, appreciate you guys joining, especially all those who joined the live stream last night. It was a lot of fun. Definitely happy about how the draft went yesterday. We're going to have to see how things play out. Maybe that makes me sound like a pessimist. I honestly don't feel like one. I'm excited to see it. I think Jacksonville is building their offense a heck of a lot better than they have before, and you just got to have some patience with this because it could end up not working the first year. You could have games where Gabe Davis is off, and then Brian Thomas Jr. is still kind of figuring things out, and he's getting clamped. Like, that can happen. Those moments could cause us to lose some games, but in the long term, you know, I think Brian Thomas Jr. could have that kind of career that's similar to CeeDee Lamb. I don't know if he reaches the same height, because that's saying a lot, but just this guy that maybe he wasn't the best player in the world right off the bat, but you give him time, you let him develop, all of a sudden now he's really damn good. So those are my thoughts, guys. I appreciate y'all joining. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Join us tonight when we try to live stream or when I release the video on the pick. Really excited for it, but we'll see you tonight. And finally, go Jags.